Okay, so in this section, we're going to learn all about how we send emails in App Engine, and also we're going to learn how we can test the sending out of the emails from our local computer. So this is going to be really neat because we can actually test sending out emails from our local computer, so we don't have to deploy each time to test our emails. So this will be nice and handy. And again, if you're using some different technology when you're developing your web applications, such as maybe other frameworks, or you're not using App Engine, for example, it's often the case where you need to install all kinds of different libraries and configure your local computer so it's able to send out email and so on and so forth. So that's a really tedious process, and in App Engine the SDK solves this for us, so that's all really nice and I appreciate it. Okay, so let's get right to it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to import the module from that, or the library that will send out the email for us. So let's say from google.appengine.api import mail. Okay, now let's delete this pass and just create more space here. So first we need to create a email object. Okay, so let's say email object is equal to mail.email message, and here we specify who the sender is. Now the sender is really important because App Engine is not going to allow us to send emails if we're trying to say that the sender is someone that is in fact not us. Okay, so what we need to do is we always need to provide, or we need to say that the sender comes from our domain. Okay, and since we yet haven't purchased a domain name and we don't have a custom domain, we can use App Engine's subdomain which they provide us, so that we can actually access our application without having to go ahead and buy a domain name. So let's just type in, for example, no reply, which is the usual case, and here's where we type in our temporary, let's say, domain name. So in my case this is, or in any case, this is always going to be your project ID. So in my case this is yumsearch2, then .appspot. And since we're sending out mail, Google tells us that we need to say it's appspotmail.com. If we were to access our application, once we would have deployed it, we could simply go to yumsearch2.appspot.com and we would access our application. But since we're sending out mail, we have to say appspotmail.com. Okay? Next thing we need to say is the subject of the message. So we're going to say confirm your YumSearch account. Okay, and to who we're sending it out to. So I'm going to say to is going to be the to that we're passing in here. Okay, so now we're going to be sending out a HTML message which is going to be rendered by the email client as if it were kind of like a website, but the email is going to be formatted in HTML. So we're going to be using templates. And since the link that each user needs to click must have its own confirmation code and its own user ID, we need to pass in variables to the template. So let's say email parameters is going to be a dictionary, and one key is going to be, for example, the user ID, and it's going to be the user ID we pass into the function, and the other one is the confirmation code, and it's going to be the confirmation code we pass into the function. Okay, good. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to actually render the HTML. So let's say HTML from template is equal to CLS, because this is a class method. So it's basically the same thing as we called self, but since we're using a class method, it's called CLS instead. So CLS Jinja environment.get template. Okay. Now we still haven't created a template, but we will after the fact. So let's just go ahead and point this get template to a directory or a directory and file that we will create in the future. So for now, let's just leave it at email / because this is going to be in the email folder. And now we can call this file, for example, confirmation email. Okay, .html. And now the last thing we need to call is the render method, and we need to pass in our email parameters to the render method. Okay, Okay, good. Looks good. Now, next thing we need to do is to actually create this file.